Hey, James, we are in the high cotton. I mean, we have four guests who are chairs of some of the most important parties, Democratic chairs, the most important states in the country. Susan Zwicker of Virginia, Lavora Barnes of Michigan, Ben Wickler of Wisconsin, and Nikki Fried of Florida, all states that really will matter a lot in November. So let me just start with each of you. Susan, a couple weeks ago, at least before Harris, Trump was making sounds that they really were going to compete in Virginia. Are they?
Well, they keep saying they are going to compete and bring staff on board and set up shop. Haven't seen a lot of that, just a little bit of that. But you know what? It doesn't matter what they do. We've got our plan, and we've got 18 offices open in Virginia with Harris Waltz now, 25 by the end of the month. We've had 100,000 volunteers sign up since Memorial Day. And so whatever they do, they're going to do. We've got a plan. We're going to work our plan.
Lavora, the 15 electoral votes of Michigan have worried Democrats earlier, particularly with the Gaza conflict, and the primary showed some disaffection. Has Harris made a difference, and how do you feel about your prospects in November?
Yeah, Harris has definitely made a difference. You know, the folks in Michigan are all saying that they are feeling an openness, a willingness to listen and have conversations that they weren't feeling before. You know, these folks who voted uncommitted were always good Democrats, always part of this party, and always had the desire to make sure Trump didn't win. So that's the work we're doing together. We talk to these folks in their communities every day, and they know that Donald Trump is not the answer. They're looking for, you know, some more information about Vice President Harris, and they will get it, remembering that she's only been in this race about a month. But when they get that information, they're going to come home and they're going to help us beat Donald Trump.
And the Gaza thing doesn't worry you?
Oh, it's a thought. We think about it all the time. We are making sure that we're having all the conversations we need to have. We're in that community. We've hired staff specifically to work in the Arab American and Muslim community from that community, because that's how we organize. Hire folks from the community to speak to their community. And so they're having those conversations, and they'll continue to. But we know that in the end, they know that Donald Trump is not who they need in the White House to further their goals. They know that. We know that. So we're going to make sure we're all come together to beat Trump.
Ben Wickler, same question about Wisconsin, about what a difference Harris might make. You were worried, the party was worried earlier about black turnout in Milwaukee and about youth and other turnout in Dane, both places you have to really, really do well. Has that changed in the last month with the change in the ticket?
Wisconsin is the perpetual nail-biter state. We're the only state with 4 of the last 6 presidential elections coming down to less than 1%. And there was this period before the big shift where people were just getting so nervous and thinking all the time about who our nominee should be instead of about how to make sure our nominee wins. That has totally shifted. We are now caught in an updraft of energy that touches every single metric that we can measure. This is true for black voters and Latino voters and white voters and Hmong voters. This is true for young voters. This is true for older voters. It's true in Madison and Milwaukee and in rural Wisconsin and in the small and medium-sized towns all over the state. Every single thing we can measure is going in the right direction right now, which is not to say it's a sure thing. It means that we have the energy to make this the kind of fight where we grind it out, and even if turnout skyrockets on the other side, which we have to be ready for, even if that happens, I think we're going to overtop them and win Wisconsin.
Nikki, Florida's been a great tease for Democrats in the last 2 presidential elections, I noticed the other day Republicans now have a huge registration advantage. You also have some pluses. You have abortion and marijuana on the ballot, which presumably would bring out some of your voters. Do you really have a shot in Florida this year?
We do. We have a huge shot. And even the misrepresentation of the voter registration gap. And I think most people, not only in Florida but across the country, don't understand exactly what happened. So in 2022, under the leadership of Ron DeSantis and Republicans, they passed a new law that every single year there has to be list maintenance for the supervisors of elections. And they changed the definition of an active voter. So last year alone, 880,000 Democrats ended up on the inactive list. And that is what's making this difference. They all can still vote. And of course, there's a disproportionate amount of African American and Hispanics that are on that list. About 40% are African American and 30% are Hispanic. And those are people that may not have voted in 2022. I think that is historically known that the Democrats, the bottom fell out in November of 2022 with 1 million Democrats not showing up in the gubernatorial race. And a lot of those people end up on this inactive list. So when we are able to talk to those voters who may not have been feeling touched in the last 2 election cycles, have a reason to come out this time, they all can vote. And that's how we start to make up some of those gaps. And Florida has now almost 1/3 of our electorate is independent. And they have been breaking for Democrats 65 to 70%. We saw that in the mayor's race in Jacksonville last year, flipping one of our House seats this year. And so when an energized Democratic base that is organized, that is boots on the ground, we too have about 25,000 new volunteers just in the last 3 weeks. And we have a new organization that's organizing, that's putting all those boots on the ground. We hit 1 million doors as of this past weekend from the beginning of 2024. 1.3 million phone calls in the last, since getting up to our primary, which is on tomorrow, Tuesday. And so these are the opportunities. So collectively, we have an energized base. We have a state that is pissed off that Ron DeSantis has taken us into such an extreme direction. In which property insurance is still the #1 issue. Property insurance under DeSantis' leadership, or lack thereof, has grown 400% since he became governor. It's the highest in the country. 6-week abortion ban, book banning, decimation of our complete education system, both from K through 12, higher ed, abortion's on the ballot, cannabis is on the ballot, and a fractured Republican Party. Ron DeSantis doesn't want Donald Trump or Rick Scott to win. It hurts his brand. He'd rather see them lose, and so he can go out in 2028 and say, see, I should have been your nominee in 24. So there's interesting dynamics that are happening in our state. On top of that, we are the 2nd largest student population outside of California, between our state universities, our HBCUs, our colleges, and when they are energized, and we have been doing dorm storms all week and seeing just huge numbers of voter registration to that generation, all of these things are converging at the same moment of a perfect storm that don't sleep on Florida.
James Carville, don't sleep on Florida.
I'm going to go in reverse order, so Nikki, you
He's going to tear apart my argument.
We obviously text each other a lot, and if you could just talk about how important and critical insurance pricing is in Florida, and why do we think that might be not a sleeper issue, but a huge issue? And talk about what's happening, because I also have a place I live in the Gulf South myself, so I know a little bit about insurance rates. Yep. Frankly, my wife and I we just take the crapshoot because we have a mortgage. I ain't paying that shit. So knock it down. Just knock it down.
Yeah, it's the #1 issue. Whether you have lived there for decades and now can't afford your property insurance, or you are a new homeowner and can't afford it, or even if you are a renter and your landlord is then increasing your cost of your rent because of that. So every single person in the state of Florida is impacted. It is, again, a 400% increase. I mean, my mom is 73 years old, and her and her property insurance doubled. She's on a fixed income, right. and so she's even worrying about how she's going to make those payments for her mortgage. And so it impacts everybody. And why the Republicans are going to be harmed in this election cycle for it is because, one, they've done nothing to fix it. In fact, they've had 3 special sessions, so again, on taxpayers' dime to bring everybody up to Tallahassee. And what have they done? They've given blank checks to the insurance companies. They've taken away people's rights to sue. You're still seeing from some of the hurricanes from 2022, the insurance companies are walking away. And part of that reason is, one, is the climate. I mean, we are surrounded by 3 bodies of water. The Republicans refuse to accept that the climate is changing and mitigation of any of those risks. And so why should the insurance companies mitigate the risk when we, the people, aren't doing it? And so they're leaving. Even Citizens, which is supposed to be the insurer of last resort, in a lot of cases is the insurer of only resort, they too have asked for the largest increase this past last month. And if in fact we get hit by a hurricane, a Cat 4, Cat 5, it will literally bankrupt our state. We are sitting at $530 billion of exposure. And people in our state don't understand that when Citizens has that type of exposure, it's the people that cover those costs, because every single homeowner that has a an insurance policy, will then be responsible, even if it's not citizens, they are responsible. It's a hurricane tax. And so we all will be responsible. So it will, in fact, cripple and bankrupt our state, and we are going to hammer that. That is our candidates. They're talking about 2 issues. Now they get to talk about a third, but 2 issues: property insurance and abortion rights. Now the third is the first female president of the United States. But that's why we really believe that this is an issue that Democrats have solutions on, have been presenting solutions, and we're going to be rewarded at the ballot box for it.
Well, thank you. So Ben, we'll go to you next. It strikes me that the Republicans have a particularly unappealing Senate candidate in Wisconsin.
It's all relative.
Yeah, but this guy, but when you say farmers don't work very hard, that's not. I don't know much about Wisconsin, but I don't think that's a very much of a winning message. But do you think there's any chance? And we talk about possibility of this in North Carolina, birth to losing negative coattails. That at some point maybe we'll get more excited to vote against him. They'll be less excited to vote for him. Tell us about this clown running for the Senate and why it's important in Wisconsin. We've got a competitive Senate race there too.
So Wisconsin has one great senator. Other states get 2 senators. For some reason, we only get Tammy Baldwin. But she does, more than double the work of other senators. She's amazing, a champion. She fights against special interests. Most Wisconsin Republicans did not want to run against her. But there's this one guy who is not a Wisconsin Republican. He's a California banker. He owns a $3.2 billion bank in Orange County, California. He was voted one of Orange County's most influential citizens 3 times in a row, which when Tammy Baldwin's on the stump, she likes to say, now, is there an Orange County in Wisconsin? No, we don't grow oranges in the state of Wisconsin. We make milk in Wisconsin. So Orange County banker Eric Hovde, he grew up in Madison, moved to Washington, D.C., got rich, came back to try to run for Senate in 2012, lost the primary to the person who then lost to Tammy Baldwin, then moved out to California, made even more money, flirted with running in 2018. Now he's back. And you know the Will Rogers quote, I never met a man I didn't like? Mm-hmm. Eric Hovde has never met a Wisconsinite he did like. His litany of people that he's just offended baldly is astonishing for anyone who wants to get votes from those people. He's not only has said that farmers don't work hard anymore, they just sit around on their tractors. He said seniors in nursing homes don't have the mental capacity to vote. He has said that young people now don't have a work ethic, which, go take that, young people. He said women think too much about Hollywood. He said that people struggling with their weight should pay extra for their health insurance as a penalty because there have to be consequences for their decisions. The list goes on and on. We actually have a website that's a handy reference guide, EricHovdeDoesn'tLikeYou.com. And this is the guy that Republicans found. There's one reason why they wanted him to run for Senate, which is that he has a gigantic pile of money that he's willing to set on fire. So he is now running ads all over the state, and sometimes deigning to show up here or there and mangle the Pledge of Allegiance in an amazing moment at the Slinger racetrack in Slinger, Wisconsin. But he's kind of a microcosm of so much that's wrong with the Republican Party at this moment. It's a party of billionaires that looks down on regular people and tries to enact an extreme agenda, including total abortion bans, which he has a track record of supporting, all in service of a MAGA vision of total disaster and chaos. And it means that Democrats have one more reason to vote, and it also means that Republicans have one less reason to vote. He just doesn't actually inspire anyone on the Republican side to get out and cast a ballot. So we have the presidential race, which has this dynamic. J.D. Vance is stalking around Wisconsin right now. He's going to be in Wisconsin on Tuesday against the giant rally for Harris and Walz. We have Eric Hovde. We have, in the U.S. House, we have a guy like Derek Van Orden, who has made a name for himself nationally by screaming obscenities at teenagers in the U.S. Capitol, possibly under the influence, not entirely clear, and being denounced on the Senate floor by Mitch McConnell, as well as by Chuck Schumer, for yelling at these teenage Senate pages, which is just a disgrace to our state. This is the same guy who was on Capitol grounds on January 6th and then deleted his tweets and lied about it afterwards. We have screenshots. So that's in the House. And then we have our state legislature, where the Republican Party has been a complete disgrace. And now they're facing fair maps for the first time in 14 years. So at every level of the ballot, we have Republicans who energize Democrats and Democrats who energize Democrats and Republicans in disarray. That is what gives, I mean, even in a state, Wisconsin is the fourth hardest state to vote in the country, second hardest state to register to vote. Even with the unions have been smashed by Scott Walker and the Republicans, even with all the rules rigged against us, that kind of energy and the contrast with our candidates gives me enormous hope as we go into the fall.
So I'm talking about Michigan because I always tell people, Democrats, we're a coalition. And if you're in a coalition and you're comfortable, you're not in a coalition. You're in something else. The nature of being in a coalition is that somebody, and let's talk about our Muslim brothers and sisters that are a large part of your state. Is there any outreach to try to understand what these people are saying and try to bring them in the fold and understand and be kind of consistent?
We've been doing outreach as a party all year. We have a coalitions director who has taken on the task of making sure we build a strong outreach program. I have been in the community multiple times, meeting with leaders, having conversations. We've hired these young fellows from the community who spend all of their time taking meetings and having conversations with folks and listening and passing on the information and the questions that folks ask. We have made it our business to make sure that folks know that they are a welcome member of our coalition, and it is a big-ass coalition in Michigan, absolutely. And we don't win without all of the members of that coalition participating, and we've been making it very clear that they are welcome in our coalition and that we want them to help us defeat Trump. You know, we don't win with one piece of that coalition or two pieces of that coalition. We win with the entirety of it. It's a fist. I just did the fist. I'm on a podcast. Nobody can see it. But we win with all those pieces of that coalition together. And so that's why we do that outreach in the Muslim and Arab community. We do outreach in the Black community. We do outreach in our rural communities. We do outreach. Like, we are everywhere all the time in Michigan, and that's how you win, being everywhere all the time.
So, Susan, you and I have been friends for 42 years, I guess, 1982.
1982.
And you've
She
been
was
involved
just
in
a-
the state
She was a
party.
baby. She was a child.
You're a long-serving chairman of the state party. Could you share with our listeners what state parties do and why these people are important that we're talking to? And if I give money to the state party, how can I feel comfortable that it's going to be put to good use? So just give us a little bit of what y'all do and what
Sure.
these people do.
And as you know, James, I've been involved in the party all my life in one way or the other. I grew up in the party. I was a county chair of Highland County Democratic Committee at age 22, smallest
Yesterday.
county in the state, more sheep than people. But you know, I came up through the party, so under people like Lavora did too, who is got her start in Virginia with Alan Diamondstein and other great leaders who brought us in. So I always saw value in the party. And when the party chairmanship opened up, I made a conscious decision to run with encouragement from our leaders. But part of the reason I was running was to, and I put this in my announcement, to put a permanent infrastructure in place so that, you know, in Virginia we have elections every year, so that we weren't rebuilding something from year to year or who was party chair to party chair, and that we would be sustainable if we didn't have a governor. Never thinking that would happen, but lo and behold, it did. And I have to say, our plan worked. Our plan has worked. I mean, yes, I have been chair for longer than Joe Fitzpatrick, James. Joe Fitzpatrick was chair in Virginia, remember him, for over 7 years, and I'm on 9, so it's about 3 lifetimes. But what I am really, really proud of, there are a lot of things, but we were, you know, I did not know exactly what would happen after we not only lost the governor's race, we lost the statewide ticket, and we lost the House. So we put all of our focus on getting back the House and keeping the Senate. And we were on our own for a lot of it. A lot of skeptics across Potomac didn't think we could do it. But with, our 2 U.S. senators, our leadership in the House and Senate, we pulled together and strongly opposed Glenn Youngkin's move to the far right and his doubling down on the abortion ban and so many other things, and we won. So that's one of the things that you get for your money, is a strong state party who is able to weather the storm, no matter what's happened, be able to communicate the message Do the hard work of showing up, as Lavora just talked to, in all these communities, because I take to heart the words of a very wise president, Bill Clinton, who said politics is about addition, not subtraction. And it has been, it's just, you never give up. You keep fighting. That's why it's really important as a state party, because we're all friends, us chairs, and in this together. But it's really important work what Nikki's doing, because I'm lucky. I have a great stakeholders, great Democratic leaders that have been very, very helpful. But damn it, that's a really hard job when you're in that hole. And I remember those times in Virginia, and you can't give up because things atrophy if you give up.
Yeah, I'll make one point and I'll turn it over to Al. We selected these 4 state party chairs because not all state parties are created equal. Just frankly, some are better than others. These are, in Al and I's opinion, 4 of the best state parties in the United States. And they, all 4 of them do a terrific job and very important job, and we're very glad to have them. Albert, to you.
Well, let me throw it open. How worried are any of you, and everybody jump in here, about voting suppression before the election and counting issues after the election?
Well, I can start. We are very. One, because our Secretary of State is a QAnon, who is appointed by Ron DeSantis. And so we have both a voter protection team inside the party as well as in the coordinated campaign for Harris, because we know the games that will be played. We know that the Trump campaign has tried to recruit volunteers all across the country for poll watching and poll working, and they're going to target where they're going to target. They're going to target our seniors, they're going to target our minority communities and our youth communities. And so making sure that we've got people on the front lines that are the eyes and ears and to find protection for those people who are going to come and to vote. Because look, we saw what happened on January 6th. And they're learning their lessons of how to get the job done prior to the votes being counted. So we are monitoring it. We are, I lose sleep on it. We are consistently asking for attorneys to be volunteering. Our goal is to have an attorney at every single one of our polling locations across the state of Florida, and is, of course, being ready for the canvassing boards. And they continue to change all the laws of when they can kick out vote-by-mail ballots. They also wiped out our vote-by-mail. Every 2 years now, everybody has to re-sign up. So we know that Democrats have had a 3-to-1 advantage on vote-by-mail returns, and we have to start all over again December 31st of this year for the next election cycle. It's real in Florida.
It's real everywhere, actually. If you think about, like, in Michigan, I'm going to go out on a limb and say we have the best Secretary of State in the country in Jocelyn Benson, but we also need to have and do have a full-time voter protection team. We've had one on staff at this state party since 2018, because this is work that goes on all the time and in the local communities. In Michigan, elections are so decentralized that we have to spend a lot of time talking to over 1,000 clerks about election processes and making sure that we are protecting that vote for everyone. So we've got that big team. We've got lawyers who are ready for anything. The conversations they've had about the eventualities or the possibilities that they are prepared for have blown my mind. The things that I would have never thought could possibly happen in this country, they are ready for pre-election and post-election. And I think it's important that in all of our states, we are ready, just like Nikki said, ready for whatever's going to come, because they are coming. They've shown us a little bit of their playbook before. We've even had in Michigan a local clerk try to deny canvassing and accepting the election results in a small May election, just, I think, to test the waters and see how we would respond.
So you have to worry about, statewide you're great.
Right.
You got a great Secretary of State, governor, attorney, but counties.
Exactly.
And that's more of a challenge than last time?
I think so. I think what they did after 2020 was pay a lot of attention to who their clerks were going to be in these local counties and who were on their election boards, and they have put some of their most radical MAGA people in those places. So one of our projects has been sort of a clerks project where we're trying to run against these clerks and win these seats. We've won some of them, but not all of them. So there are plenty of clerks in Michigan who are MAGA clerks who have been very clear that they deny the election from 2020, and we expect that they will try something, we're not sure what it will look like, to make it hard for us to certify these votes.
Let me make one point and go to Ben and Susan. Okay. What you're listening to is why you don't need to donate to the state parties. Right. Because these legal issues are sitting there, they're right, they're going to try it, And the state parties are the people that put the legal teams together,
exactly right.
okay,
Yep.
in that state. So I just
Thank you for that.
Get the rest of you, but I just wanted to make that point. Why this is critical. Go ahead, Ben.
That's exactly right, and I think Wisconsin is a very similar situation to Michigan. Wisconsin has also famously decentralized election administration, 1,850 municipal clerks. For us, it's not even the county level. It's each individual city, village, township in our state has a local clerk that runs the election right there. We've seen attempts at election sabotage and subversion at the local level. We had to recruit poll workers last year to submit for this year, which means that if you're not running a year-round program, then you miss the boat. They're legally required to choose from submissions from each of the parties before they look to other lists for potential poll workers. So we are running a huge voter protection operation. We have the state actually doesn't compile lists of early vote locations, so that's something that our team does, city by city across the state. Vote.wisdems.org. You can find that list of local polling locations. You can volunteer. But I will say something else. So in Wisconsin, we have a state Supreme Court majority that is now progressive, that is now actually believes in democracy. We came in within one vote of our state Supreme Court overturning the last election. And the objection by the swing voter was that the Trump campaign waited till after the election to start filing their lawsuits. So they had a game plan for how they were going to change this time. If we hadn't won the Supreme Court in 2023, we'd be in tough situation. But the best protection in this election is to win big.
Yeah.
They cannot steal a landslide. In Wisconsin, you can't call for a recount if you win by more than 1%. Now, we had recounts in both 2016 and 2020 because we didn't clear that mark. But our biggest goal for everyone to know is to get more voters out so that we're outside the margin of stealing the election. And that is something that if we have multiple paths to 270, if we win by bigger margins in each of these states, then we'll know that once we win, we win. And that is goal one.
Ben, would you know what to do with a landslide?
We got a little taste of landslide territory in our state Supreme Court election in 2023, and it tasted good.
Tasted good,
That was a squeaky cheese curd, I'll tell you that much.
Susan?
We're a little bit like Lavor's situation. When we had the trifecta some years ago, we Democrats passed election reform that made voting in Virginia a lot easier and more accessible. What we have seen is the Republicans still put in bills to try to repeal that, and fortunately we had the blue brick wall in the Senate and now the House that stopped that. But where they are making their mark, and this is why, like the rest of you all, our big part of our budget is voter protection, and it has increased every year that I have been a state chair because it's more important. But the party in the governor's office controls the local electoral boards and they go flip 2-1. And back when I started out and got to know James, those jobs were seen as kind of rewards for service. You didn't really have to do that much. And now it's a full-time commitment of being ever vigilant. And a lot of the local electoral boards, again, and they've been advised to do this, they pulled back the Sunday voting, they've pulled back satellite locations, they've dropped boxes, all the things that they're just slowly trying to repeal them on the local level, and we have the same kind of effort going on, and you just have to stay ever vigilant. But I thank you for mentioning that, James, because I didn't. But again, that is a key piece of all of us is help fund that because it's really critical.
Go ahead, Al.
Well, I'm going to talk about down-ballot a little bit, but three of you have Senate races this year: Michigan and Florida and Wisconsin. And you have, Susan?
I have a Senate race.
I get these emails from Tim Kaine that says Virginia will decide which party controls the Senate. But if Virginia decides that, you're going to have a lot of Republicans. But in any event, you do have a Senate race, and you also have several competitive House races.
Yes.
Down ballot, what difference has the change in the ticket made for November?
In Michigan, we run a fully coordinated campaign. Everyone folds in. So the first thing that's happened with this change is that the excitement and energy on the ground from the volunteers has gone up exponentially, which means there are more volunteers to knock the many, many doors we need to knock and make the many, many phone calls we have. I also will say some of our candidates are more fired up and more excited to be part of that coordinated campaign than they were before. I think they're feeling the energy on the ground and really want to be part of it. And I think that we have the joy, which is a word that I've heard used more in the context of politics ever than in my life. Like we don't talk about joy, but now we do. And people like showing up at our offices. We've got 53 offices across the state. People like showing up at our offices and working together and finding their state House candidate there, finding their congressional candidate there, finding Alyssa Slotkin there, who's running for that U.S. Senate seat because she is everywhere in the state, so that they can knock doors with them and be part of what feels like a movement in many ways, more than just a campaign, but really does sort of feel like a movement on the ground in Michigan. And I know our down-ballot folks are feeling that, and it makes them have hope and excitement. And I think they're all raising a little bit more money, too.
I will say we see the same thing in Wisconsin. So we have our Senate race, we have the House races, and then in the state legislature, we finally got fair maps. They were signed into law this February. So right now, Republicans have a supermajority in our state Senate, 22 out of the 33 seats, and in the state assembly, they have 64 out of the 99 seats. We only have 35. But yesterday, one of the foremost analysts of state legislative races, Chaz Nuttycombe, has a big Twitter presence, revealed his new state legislative forecast, and he said Wisconsin's assembly majority is a toss-up. We are absolutely in range for going from near super minority status to flipping 15 plus seats in a 99 seat chamber and winning an outright majority in the Wisconsin Assembly, which would be a sea change in our state, unlocking everything from voting rights, potentially Medicaid expansion, cannabis legalization, so much. And then over 2 cycles, we can win a trifecta. We can win our state Senate majority and make sure we have a Democratic governor in our next term. 2-term Tony has said the word 3-term Tony here once or twice. We'll find out what he winds up deciding. But there's a huge opportunity. And the change at the top of the ticket has unlocked this well of energy. So the candidates are more excited to knock because they're not being pestered about what's happening on the Democratic ticket now. People are just asking how to get involved. People are demanding yard signs for candidates up and down the ballot. We have our Rebecca Cooks, now our 3rd congressional district nominee. She grew up on a dairy farm in Eau Claire, the dairy farm across the street from the Eau Claire farm where 13,000 people showed up for Tim Walz and Vice President Harris in Wisconsin a couple weeks ago. And that is the kind of energy in rural Wisconsin that powers huge victories down ballot as well.
And we're seeing it too all over Florida. We still have our primary, so we are late. Welcome to Florida. Primary is Tuesday, so we will have our U.S. Senate candidate after this Tuesday, tomorrow primary. But we're running against Rick Scott, who is the most disliked member of the U.S. Senate. His last poll that came out.
It's a close contest with Ted Cruz, but he's.
I don't know about. I think he even votes right of Ted Cruz. So he's the most extreme in his votes in the Senate. He also poll came out last week. His 35% favorability. So for being statewide, run 3 times, nobody likes him. We already knew that. And now we have an opportunity and apparatus with 25,000 volunteers, with energy up and down the ticket. This is the first time that Florida Democrats have fielded a seat in every congressional, every House, and every Senate in over 30 years. And I want to probably say ever, because back in the day, and that's only 30 years because we don't have records that go back any further, back then, the Democrats controlled. So the reality is that the Republican Party has never done this. And so that's continuing to bring the energy from all parts of our state. We do have a 67 county plan because everything right now is on the line, and we do feel like everything is possible. In some of these, even these more red rural areas, you don't see Trump banners, you don't see Trump flags. You see more Democrats being willing to put out their flags and get out of their houses and show their support for the Democrats. And people too are showing up at every one of our offices We have 300 new volunteers in Okaloosa County, which is Matt Gaetz' hometown. So that tells you everything you need to know that Florida Democrats are energized by this moment, and Republicans don't like Rick Scott. So as long as we continue doing our job, giving them hope, giving them opportunity, and of course, if one of our candidates who is a female comes out of the primary, that adds to the conversation about women in power and women opportunities, and it will be, I believe, our first female U.S. Senator coming out of the state of Florida.
Susan, pick up on this, but I also, our friend and colleague Joe Klein wrote something that really captured my attention this morning. He said, I've written a lot of bad things about Donald Trump. I've called him a lot of names, but I'm about to call him something I've never called him before, which is boring. We're really getting, people are getting, is there an element of that there? And how is that, affecting, we were talking about down-ballot races, but just give your sense of that, Susan.
No, he's a lot less interesting, than the 2015 Donald Trump riding down that escalator. And it seems like to me he's just kind of old and grumpy. And look, he's mad. He's mad that he had a plan and the plan got disrupted. And you know what?
You don't think he's better looking than Kamala Harris the other day?
Yeah, right. I mean, it's even hard to believe that stuff is just even like coming out of somebody's mouth that's a nominee for, the highest office in the land. But I just think the contrast too is just so different. And I also am so grateful and so inspired by the fact that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are fighting back. I think when Trump first came on the political scene, no one knew how to, that isn't real, and he was gonna be real or whatever. But like, I double dog dare that man to go out and hover around Kamala Harris like he did Hillary Clinton on that debate stage, because I can tell you, I don't think she's gonna take it.
Yeah. James.
So I'm going to try to wrap this up a little bit, but there's one thing that every Democratic State Party chairman hates, and that's Democratic primaries. Okay, and Nikki, it was particularly been a historical problem in Florida, and apparently you cleaned that shit up, and we didn't have any of these decisive primaries. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, primaries, and the problem in Florida primaries is it's so late. August. And so that gives a free range, especially in a state like Florida where the Republicans do have more money and they have more resources and they are in power. And so our primaries, again, end of August, it gives us 2.5 months to reorganize, to make sure there's funding there, that the candidates have to spend all of this money just talking to the Democratic base. And like I said earlier in the show, 1/3 of our state is independent. And so if we're not talking to those independents until the end of August, beginning of September, it really puts us at a significant disadvantage. So I in some cases, like, primaries are good. It weeds out conversations, but in the grand scheme of things, here in Florida, it's not worth the juice isn't worth the squeeze, and it's really important to consolidate and get behind candidates early, because we are at a deficit if we have to wait till after a primary.
Well, thank you all. We had very high hopes for this panel. I think we can easily say, Albert, they were exceeded, and
I think they exceeded it. James, can we
just
just do one thing, just in 15 seconds? What would you like to hear from Kamala Harris Thursday night?
Why I'm for you. Because Donald Trump's not for you. Why I'm for you.
I think this is a great opportunity for her to tell her story of self. I think a lot of Americans don't know as much about Kamala as I do, and I want them to. So I want her to tell her story.
Ben?
Vice President Harris was a child in Madison, Wisconsin, and she grew up dedicating her life to protecting people and to standing up against often powerful, wealthy criminals and scamsters and fraudsters, and delivered for regular folks, and is now facing down the biggest special interest in the country to bring costs down and to fight for freedom for everyone. Her telling her personal story from working at McDonald's as a teenager to being the sitting vice president of the United States, and how she'll fight for all the people who've had life experiences just like hers, all the people in states like Wisconsin and across the country. That is a powerful message that Republicans have no answer to, and I can't wait to hear it from the stage.
Nikki?
Yeah, as the future first female president of the United States, hopefully learning some lessons from 2016. A lot of times, women in politics, you have to be one or the other. You either have to be, if you're strong, you're considered a bitch, or you're weak. And so Kamala strikes that beautiful balance that she demands presence and on the stage and an understanding of the issues and commanding of what is going on around her. So showing up that night and showing women and young girls that everything is possible. Dream big, because those dreams, I live in Florida, those dreams do come true.
So I want Susan, Nikki, I want y'all to make a promise to me. We will be bitches between now and election day.
I promise.
Damn
You get out of line, you will be bitch slapped right away.
Damn straight. Deal.
If Ben can be an
Yeah, I'm in there too. Come on, let's do this.
Be a bitch too. We need some bitches in this party.
I think, can we get
We will be bitches.
T-shirts that say "Proud Bitches"?
Yes, indeed. Yes, I'll wear it.
More bitches and less preachy females. I'll say.
That's right.
Wow.
All right.
James, let's just thank them all. They've been fabulous.
Fabulous.